commissioners that are here. And I don't know, Madam Clerk, you don't need to take a roll call, correct? Or since we're not going to be having any items, or do you need to?
I think for the record, we should.
We should. Go ahead. Why don't you take the roll call, and then I'll make a couple comments, and we can get the ball rolling.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Gilbert, Commissioner Gonzalez, Commissioner Steinberg, Appropriations Committee Vice Chairwoman Quinn Higgins, Government Efficiency and Transportation Ad Hoc Committee Vice Chairwoman Millian Orbis,
Present.
Appropriations Committee Chairwoman Regalado,
Present.
Government Efficiency and Transportation Ad Hoc Committee Chairman Bermudez.
Present.
4 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you.
Okay. Before we start, I just wanted to say a couple things, and I think I'm sure most of my colleagues, and I'm not going to speak for them, probably share some of my sentiments. I mean, we all know, we've all heard that we're facing a tough budget year, and difficult choices will have to be made. We also understand that our residents are having a very difficult time, and we are here to do, first and foremost, protect their tax dollars. So obviously this is going to be a taxing year, no pun intended, to all of us. And I think today's meeting is an opportunity to really get information as to how we arrive at a decision. And when I say we, I don't mean just us in this room, but our colleagues and some of you out there. We also know it's a tough year, and I know Chairwoman Regalado shares this tough year at the state. We don't have the final results yet, but it's not going to be, it doesn't look anyways. If I was a betting man, I'd bet it's not going to be a great year. So as my colleague has been saying, and my colleague to the right, Commissioner Regalado, we've also had some big changes with the constitutional offices, and now we have to deal with that. And whatever is past, but we have to deal with it. Thank you, Commissioner. So, I hope that everybody understands that our goal even today is to get more information to make informed decisions. But I don't think any of us are under the impression that they're going to be easy decisions to make. And I think this has all led to this. So I think I'm going to turn it back to the Chairwoman. I think we have a presentation we're going to hear from, correct?
Yes, so we have a few presentations, and there is some data that's going to be presented by the Commissioner Auditor. As many of you know, I've been working with him to get data on past budgets. Right now, we're waiting for the mayor to provide us with the current budget, but we do have a lot of information regarding past budgets and some line items, and we are going to be talking about some things that have occurred historically over the last few years. I think we all know that it's a difficult year, and we're all aware that difficult decisions have to be made. That is of no surprise. Like I said early on, when we had our first appropriations meeting, we've been talking about the shortfall for 5 years. There's nothing new about the shortfall. I think to try to hang it around the neck of the constitutional officers is inappropriate. But that being said, it is an opportunity to right-size government. And the purpose of this meeting is to have a candid conversation about our priorities as a board while the mayor finalizes her budget. Because once we get that budget, historically, we haven't had a lot of flexibility moving away from the general principles. So, we're going to be laying out a few things. One of the things that we're going to talk about first is we're going to have a presentation from Jess McCarthy regarding what has happened at the state level. And like I mentioned 2 meetings ago, historically, we've just, whatever the state is funding, whatever the federal, government is funding, we provide a match no matter what without really thinking about it long term. And that's a mindset that's going to change this year and next year. We're also going to be talking about, with Yenka, positions, the creation of positions in the past. What is the future of that? We know that we cannot balance this budget without eliminating jobs. That is a reality, and we're going to be deep diving into that. What I will say about this, and agreeing with my colleague, our residents have tightened their belts, and it's about time that we tighten our belts. There's a lot of things that were created during the pandemic that must die. They must die sooner rather than later, and I've been saying this for some time, and we're going to talk a little bit about those creatures. But I also think that we should challenge some of what have been historically the budgetary tools of this administration. So for example, for last in, first out is not something that I agree with. I think that that is useful. It has its utility. But I don't think that that should be a guiding principle for all the eliminations of positions. I think we should look at what positions provide value to this regional government and what positions do not provide value to this regional government. Because I think it would be difficult for us to go to our residents and explain why the folks that are doing the day-to-day that they interface with are being eliminated while other people are not. So those are some of the things that we're going to be discussing. And then also looking at the different departments and seeing, have they tightened their belts? What does that look like? And what would we be comfortable with in terms of have they gone as far as they can go? So with that, my understanding is that we have Jess on by Zoom. Jess is still in Tallahassee.
Still in Tallahassee, no?
Oh, he's back? Yeah. I spoke to him, and he was going to join us by Zoom because he wasn't available.
He's probably on the beach somewhere.
No.
Okay, just
Poor
checking.
Jess.
All right, Jess, just checking.
Good afternoon, if you can hear me.
We
Yes,
can hear you.
we can hear you, and we can
perfectly.
see you, Jess.
Are you in Tallahassee or are you, in fact, in Miami-Dade County?
I'm actually in neither of those locations. I'm in Orlando for the Florida Association of Counties meetings leading up to the next session, the
Okay.
2026
All right.
session.
So say hello to Commissioner Higgins.
Yes.
I will.
So,
So,
Jess, you
well,
have
thanks for the-
you have the floor to give us an update on where we are in terms of this session.
Yes, well, thanks for the opportunity. And, I would just start, as you all know, this was a very unique year in session with the 3 special sessions, 6 committee weeks. And instead of our normal 60-day session, we had a session that ended up being 105 days in length, and it just ended a week ago, Monday. So I want to dive right into what I think are the biggest fiscal impact issues to the county. And again, not getting into the policy of the benefits, pros and cons of this, but just talking about the fiscal impact to the county. I think the analysis would have to start with the tax package that was it was House Bill 7031. It was part of the budget process. It was a conference report that was voted on Monday, June 16th, the last day of the session. As you all know, it eliminated the business rent tax, and that was a savings to businesses of about $900 million. Anytime that there's a tax reduction or elimination at the state level, there are corresponding impacts to the county in a couple different ways. One is from revenue sharing, and then the other 2 are the half pennies for transit and for Jackson. So the estimates that I have on the business rent tax, that's a $26 million impact on the transit half penny, an equal $26 million on Jackson. And then the revenue sharing estimate out of OMB is around $12 million. So that's the business rent tax. Another component of the tax package was sales tax relief. Back to school was made permanent, and a number of items, batteries, bike helmets, that whole list of things that people like those sales tax holidays, but they do, just as they have an impact on the state, they also have an impact on those 3 revenue sources, the revenue sharing, the transit, and Jackson. I've had some conversations with our OMB. I know they're working on some numbers as to what those impacts might be. The third component of the tax package is there is some property tax relief in there related to affordable housing. Obviously that, policy-wise, that may be something folks support, but it also would have a corresponding fiscal impact on the county. And then the fourth thing I would want to touch on from the tax package would be the aviation fuel tax, which was eliminated. I know that's an important issue to the airport, and that's a source of funding for the airport. Now, let me go to one last provision that's in the tax package, which is transit funding for the New Start state match. New Start's a federal program, but the state was using dock stamp money from deeds and mortgages to provide a state match for New Start projects, and the three big ticket projects in the state would be our own Miami-Dade County project, Smart Plan, and in particular, perhaps the Northeast Corridor. The Broward County is also impacted. Hillsborough is impacted. Those three counties combined, that transit New Start funding, eliminating that dock stamp is about a 40 to 50 million impact spread across the three. So we'd have some percentage of that 40 to 50 million from that. So that's kind of some things. The tax package, I think, had the biggest impacts, and some of which were unanticipated as we went through the session. Some of these proposals really didn't surface until the Friday the June 13th in an outline, and then the bill language came out Saturday afternoon, and then the conference report was voted on Monday, June 16th. So that all happened very, very quickly. The next bill I would go to, also a budget-related bill, and I should point out that these bills have not yet gone to the governor. The budget, and the related bills and the tax package are still pending being presented to the governor. He has 15 days to act on it. However, obviously the state's fiscal year begins in 6 days on July 1st. So these are all pending still going to the governor. The FRS employer contribution rates are set as a conforming bill to the state budget. That's Senate Bill 7022. That had a significant increase in the FRS rates, 149 million for all 67 counties was the estimate from the state. Now, my understanding in talking to our OMB is that they had already anticipated the Miami-Dade piece of that impact, and so that's something that's already baked into their analysis. The next issue I would go to is I do want to touch on, obviously, member projects. That's money coming into the county, and appreciate all the work of our delegation in helping us secure that funding. I would start that with 20 million for Biscayne Bay, and then there's a long list of member projects for stormwater, for mental health, for transportation, road projects, for animal shelter, a lot of different projects there. Those do require a match, so a local match. Chair Regalado, as you sort of touched on earlier. So obviously we appreciate that funding, and we hope that gets past the governor when he looks at the budget. But that will also have a local match impact on the county. I next want to touch just briefly on issues that we avoided that thankfully will not have a fiscal impact on the county. And the first one I'd start with there is the pair of bills, Senate Bill 1664 and HB 1221, that related to the local option taxes and that would have subjected those taxes to an 8-year cycle of referendums for voter approval. That, again, the transit tax, the Jackson Hospital tax, the 2.5 pennies, that also would have impacted tourist development tax. That's beaches, that's cultural money, different sources, and as well the food and beverage tax for homeless. Those four were in that pair of bills. That pair of bills did not pass, so that's a fiscal that we avoided. I would also next go to the Sovereign Immunity Bill, HB 301, which, as we went into the session, we thought had a very good chance of passage. That was estimated to have around a $30 million recurring impact on the county. That bill did not pass, so we avoided that fiscal impact. And then finally, there was obviously a lot of conversation this session about property taxes, with the exception of the affordable housing property taxes that were included in the tax package. We don't see a super significant impact. We were looking at very significant fiscal impacts in terms of, some proposals even eliminated property tax entirely. Some were on homestead property, and I know some members of the board support those things. Just speaking to the fiscal impacts, we won't have to deal with that for this session and this budget cycle. However, that's clearly on the table for the 2026 session, which is an early session and which is going to start up with the first committee week on October 6th. with the session starting on January 13th. But every indication is property tax will be a significant centerpiece of the upcoming committee weeks in session. And that's actually part of why I'm in Orlando now, to sort of coordinate with counties across the state to sort of start planning and getting ready for that legislation coming up in the 2026 session. So that's just a very brief, quick overview of some of the biggest ticket items, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But that would kind of be my big ticket overview for the 2025 session.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Jess. And I can tell you that obviously on the Tri-Rail side and the transit side, we were all concerned about the changes to the two rail funds. And we'll see what happens with that. My understanding in particular for the Smart Starts is that that was the match for the federal funding that we had for the Coastal Link. So that kind of puts right, Jimmy? That kind of puts a pin in things.
Yes, it puts that very much at risk.
Now, Jess, I was told that that is not something that the governor can veto. How does because those two lines were very interesting. So what is the governor's involvement in those two accounts?
Well, that's all part of the tax package. So he has line item veto related to the budget, but in terms of a bill such as the tax package, he would have to either veto the entire bill or sign the entire bill or let it become law, but he doesn't have the option of going in and sort of surgically taking particular provisions out of a substantive bill.
Right. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good question. Commissioner Steinberg.
I was just asking, specifically like to the Coastal Link, for instance, do we have like a plan B?
The very good, Jimmy Morales, Chief Operating Officer, through the chair. I'm sorry, I should have said that before. We are obviously very carefully looking at the impacts of decisions that have been made in Tallahassee recently, as well as changes in Washington as well, and are relooking at our SMART plan, are looking at the funding plan for the Northeast Corridor, and we will be coming back with, thoughts, recommendations. It's there's a lot in flux. But clearly, we are entering a more challenging environment for public transportation.
thank you, Jimmy. And I know that on the Tri-Rail side, Dave Deck is in Tallahassee today, and they're trying to find solutions with FDOT. We actually have a Tri-Rail meeting on Friday where we're going to be discussing this as a board. So we'll take that up. Then my other question is, we know that FRS is baked into the county's projections, but Jimmy, did you guys consider the reduction to the half penny? And I guess we'll talk about Jess was mentioning 26 million to the half penny, and then also we have Jackson. So is that in the shortfall that we have been talking about? I think it is. David would know.
Yeah, I defer to David on the FRS question.
No, FRS, my understanding is it's
FRS,
fine.
Yeah, we're covered.
Yeah. David, half penny, and Jackson.
David Clodfelter, OMB. The business rent tax impact that was just mentioned was not included in the gap. The gap that we've been discussing with each of you has been the general fund. The 12 million that Jess mentioned was directly related to that general fund amount. So the 387 technically increased by the 12 million. The PHT and the PTP are separate and apart from the gap that we've been discussing with you, and they were not originally included in any forecast that we put together.